Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. So good to see you again in our usual late night slot. Every month on the 15th, we select audience stories and adapt them into animated episodes. If you've lived through something that still haunts you and want to see it brought to life on the channel, send it to horrorstories3s.com@gmail.com. Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell me what time it is, where you are, and where you're watching from. Thank you so much. It's Thanksgiving today. It's chilly outside, but inside our small house, warm laughter mixes with the faint smell of roasted turkey. The whole family is gathered together after the big meal, eating dessert and sharing memorable stories from past holidays. We laugh as my son tells a story about playing hide and seek with the neighborhood kids. Then, a memory from a Thanksgiving many years ago rushes into my head. It happened when I was 7 years old, and no matter how many holidays have passed, it has never truly left my mind. My family lived in a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs. Right next door was the house of Mrs. Edith, a woman famous for being odd and extremely lonely. Her house was always gloomy, with tall overgrown grass in the yard and curtains closed all day long. The kids in the neighborhood used to call her the witch. Whenever we played nearby, she would slide open a window, look down with cold, sharp eyes, and yell at us. For me, the fear was much worse. Every time I walked past her house, I would get a strange, chilling feeling down my spine. A few times I glanced up and saw Mrs. Edith standing there, staring at me from an upstairs window. After that, I would take a deep breath and run all the way home every time I passed her house. I always believed she hated all kids, especially me. That November, a few days before Thanksgiving, Mrs. Edith was found dead inside her house. Neighbors whispered to each other, it was about time. The police sealed the house, and later, no relatives showed up for her funeral. I heard my parents say she had no living family. Everyone in the neighborhood was used to her living alone for decades. On that Thanksgiving day, after our family dinner, I asked my parents if I could go outside and play with my friend. It was already dark, and the roads were still wet from an afternoon rain shower. When I walked past the alley behind Mrs. Edith's house, I suddenly stopped. A faint glow of light was leaking out from the back door of the sealed house. I stepped closer. The weak light inside shone through the crack in the door and onto the dusty, foggy glass pane. Through the thin layer of dust, I suddenly saw a figure. My breath caught in my throat. The person stood absolutely still, right behind the glass door. Even though the blurry glass distorted everything, I could still see that the person was looking straight at me. The most haunting thing was the two deep black eye sockets, empty like two bottomless holes. I stood there frozen, my arms and legs stiff, completely numb. Then, a creak sound came from the door, which jolted me awake. I let out a piercing scream and dashed out of the alley. I swore the figure I saw was definitely Mrs. Edith. When I got home, I didn't dare tell anyone. My parents would think I was hallucinating from watching too many horror movies. My friends would just laugh and call me a coward. I pulled the blanket over my head and lay still. I tried to tell myself I was just imagining things, but the fear just grew bigger and bigger, making my sleep restless all night long. A week later, the main road was blocked by a truck unloading furniture. With no other way to go, I was forced to take the small alley behind Mrs. Edith's house. I tried to walk as fast as I could, looking down at the ground. Near the end of the alley, I was surprised to see Mr. Adams standing there, quietly looking at Mrs. Edith's house. He lived in the neighborhood too, and everyone knew him. I greeted him with a shaky voice, relieved to see an adult there. He turned around and gave me a soft smile. The house is going to be torn down soon. I just nodded, and as I was about to walk on, he suddenly spoke. "Hey, you really look like that little boy." "What little boy?" Mr. Adam looked at me and then told me the story. Mrs. Edith once had a son, the same age as me, when he vanished. The little boy mysteriously disappeared right outside their front door one November afternoon. The police searched for months using every method possible, but they never found anything. The boy had simply disappeared into thin air. She lived with that pain, and it wore her down, changing who she was without her even realizing it. Edith didn't hate children. She just couldn't bear to see them without thinking of her own son. I stood there, feeling confused by Mr. Adams' story. Even though I didn't fully understand everything he said, strangely, I didn't feel scared anymore. I slowly turned my head and looked at Mrs. Edith's house one last time. Through the window glass, I saw a picture of a younger Mrs. Edith with a little boy. They were smiling very happily. Now that I am a father myself, I can finally understand how much loss can absolutely crush a person. Mrs. Edith wasn't a witch. She was a mother, trapped in a pain she had no one to share with. On a recent trip to visit my parents, I looked over at the spot where Mrs. Edith's house used to be. Her house is gone now, replaced by a bigger, beautiful new house where a happy family lives. I hope their happiness can offer some comfort to Mrs. Edith's soul, even if just a little bit. I'm Jerry, 27. This happened to me in my last year of college. It was around 1 a.m. when I was returning home from a Halloween party with my two buddies, Chris and Aaron. Halfway to my house, we saw a dark figure behind a tree on the other side of the street. It was so dark, we weren't sure if it was a person. Chris felt a need to observe it better. When he got closer to the street, he confirmed that it was a person. He was wearing a dark hoodie with his hands in his pockets. But what made him creepy is how still he was leaning against a tree staring at us. We passed him pretending we didn't see him. However, when we did, Aaron pretty accidentally looked behind and saw another figure dressed the same, leaning against a car. We thought it was a simple Halloween prank, but we were still spooked out. When I finally got home, I said goodbye to my friends who continued down the road to their houses. I was so tired I went to bed right away. I was woken up about an hour later by a loud thud. I got up, looked around the room, and saw a hooded figure behind my window. I had my curtains closed, but I didn't dare to open them. After a few seconds, he left. I got out of my room to check my house, and through the window of my living room, I saw the same figure who left after a few seconds as well. But that time, when I observed him better, he had a baseball bat in his right hand. This got me into a full panic now. I got my baseball bat when I heard the same thud from my front door. I looked through the peephole and saw another hooded guy who was unmistakably the same guy we saw on the street. That time, I could see their eyes better, which made clear they were up to no good. After a few seconds, he left, followed by his two fellows from the other sides of my house. Call me a coward or even a jerk, but I thought yet again that it was a Halloween prank, since they hadn't made any real attempts to break into my house. Also, I was that kind of guy before, so I hadn't called the cops. When I woke up the next morning, I got ready for work when I was called by Chris who had spine-chilling news. At around 4 a.m., Aaron had been beaten up and robbed by 3 hooded hooligans. He barely had strength to get to the phone and dial 911. I've told him what happened to me, and he shockingly said the similar thing happened to him. At around 3 a.m., he was in a bathroom doing his thing when he heard a loud thud from a front door followed by another, but when he checked through the peephole, no one was there. Luckily, thieves seemed to be in a hurry, so they didn't steal everything. However, they had gloves, so they didn't leave any fingerprints and couldn't be identified. Aaron has an understanding for me not suspecting anything, but I still feel guilty for that. A message to all of you. Call the cops whenever you feel threatened, because you can never know anyone's intentions. Chris and I had a message as well on the note on the front windows of our cars. Happy Halloween. P.S. Good thing you locked your front door.
I'm Maddie, 27 years old. I've been working in this local hospital for 4 years now. The work is very stressful, yet I am happy with this work. Nothing beats seeing the patients you cared for getting better. For the entire time, I had not enough time to have any attachment. My dedication all poured into my work. The job demands me to stay at the hospital in the night shifts. Each week, I generally have 2 to 3 graveyard shifts like that. It starts from 7 o'clock at night and will grind through until 7 o'clock the next morning. Yet despite the tough time, the team would help each other by further dividing the shift into smaller batches, each one covering their respective section. I have encountered many types of emergencies, and many times the patients encountered serious accidents. There was this Wednesday, when I was having a quick shut-eye. Suddenly, there was a person coming in, groaning in pain. "Please help me." I jolted back awake and jumped down to the clinic main hallway. There was a man having a lot of lacerations all over his body trotting in. He's in too much pain, I believe, screaming for help, trying to walk in. I frantically called out to other nurses and pushed out a gurney by myself. Carefully lifted the man into the bed. I reeled him into the ER room as quickly as I could. A trail of blood formed on his way to the ER. After reeling the man for a short distance, I started to realize something strange. He's very light. I could barely feel any weight, and as if I was reeling an empty gurney. Despite my initial doubt, he turned around smiling, thanking me. Meanwhile, I was so concentrated in doing first aids, asking him the questions while I'm cleaning up his wounds so I could somewhat gauging his level of consciousness. But he kept repeating whatever I'm saying with an expressionless face. Even his eyes weren't blinking at all. After cleaning his wound, I once again asked the questions so that I could write down his information for further treatments. This time he was silent, yet still smirked back at me with his expressionless face. There's little time to waste, so I told him to stay put until I came back with more help and equipment. It's a surprise for such injuries that he was still stable enough to make it to the clinic. Normally, for such injuries, people would come to the clinic with family members or good Samaritans. Or maybe he was a homeless person, for those people weren't known to gather a crowd, especially when going to get treatments. Now, after some time, I suddenly realized that I was the only one taking care of this man. My other colleagues were nowhere to be found. Other nurses and the watch doctor were not there, and despite my ceaseless pleas, they're not yet present, which prompted me to resorting to knocking on their doors to wake them up. The first one would be the ER doctor of the watch. I knocked on his door very quickly and loudly. I quickly summarized for him the situation of the patient and which room he was set down in. However, He did not open the door as I hoped he would, prompting me to slam on his door more and more. The doctor finally gave in. He walked out to greet me with an annoyed expression. I knew him. That's Dr. James, a 38-year-old veteran doctor with many years of experience under his belt. He didn't talk much, yet every time working with him, I felt very stressful. His gaze on me always frightened me, and he seemed to judge me every step of the way. I dreaded every time he grabbed onto the needles. Returning to the ER patient, I tried to report the situation to Dr. James, but instead of caring, he just sighed as if exhausted and just told me, "Please return to your room. Let me get other nurses to come." There's a hint of sleepiness and grogginess in his voice. "This is my watch, and it is my responsibility." His firm words shook me to my core. Why, I asked myself, why such a freaking doctor be so heartless to his own patient in such dire conditions? I returned to my quarter furious. His irresponsibility would not go unnoticed, I thought. This incident was guaranteed to be reported to head of department. I grabbed some medical equipment and quickly roused up a few nurses and technicians up to help the patient. I ran to their sleeping quarter, turning on the light and opening up the door. Everyone in the room, in stark contrast with my expectation, threw me nothing but contempt. "Get the fuck out of here, you nuthead. This is a non-authorized entry area." I was dumbfounded with their hostile attitude. I, once again, reiterated the patient's dire conditions and asking them to help. One of the nurses rudely stood up and shoved me back to the hallway before promptly slamming the door in my face. I sat alone in the dark, quiet corridor. Those cold-hearted bastards, are they even humans? No, I now knew I could no longer rely on the other nurses. I will perform the treatment myself. I quickly returned to the ER room where the man was still waiting for treatment. The bandages on him earlier had all turned crimson red. The bed was equally smeared with blood. The iron rust smell exuded all over. Okay, massive bleeding, letter M of MARCH algorithm. Despite the amount of blood oozing out, the man still smiled at me, eyes wide open. I managed the wound closure with the best care I could, all the while talking to the man, trying to calm him and myself down. "What's your name, sir?" I asked, and once again, he kept repeating my question like a parrot. "Okay, so how about I call you Dante?" "Dante!" He repeated the name, seemed like agreeing on my point. Dante. Dante's the name that had the root in Ecclesiarchy Latin, originating from the word durante. Duro, it means hardened and persistent. The name Dante means someone that endured many hardships, yet still held strong. It was just like this man. I could clearly feel his unbreakable spirit clinging on despite all the pain and blood loss. I managed to handle the wounds as best as I could. Even though enduring a lot of small procedures with zero pain medication, Mr. Dante here still kept up his smile, and his eyes still opened wide as if nothing had happened to him. After all those procedures, now it's time to get him some pain medication, some oral ones, and a shot. By the time I had finished the shot and was about to discard the trash, suddenly, Dante laughed out loud. I turned my head around, and here I saw Mr. Dante swiveled his head at an improbable angle to look at me. Still, he gave me an expressionless smile and two eyes wide open. But at this point, it started to get more and more creepy. He laughed a lot, yet his chest was barely rising. I quickly came over to calm him down. Likely it's a state of shock. Yet as soon as I touched the man, his arm fell right off the sockets. I screamed aloud at the sight, terrified, as the bloodied arm sunk into the ground. When I looked at Dante, he still looked at me, his face frozen up in an expressionless smile. And then, when I hugged him tighter to bring him down to the bed, I could hear the bones cracking. Dante's body was slowly disintegrating, starting with the limbs and then to the head. The laughter slowly turned into a buzzing sound. His eyes, for the longest time without any noticeable blinking, completely closed off. Blood soaked out into my nurse's uniform, prompted me to just scream. It's all I could do. Everything in front of me was too surreal to even be true. Suddenly, the doors opened. Dr. James and 2 other nurses came in. Their faces were very serious. "Hold her down." "Hold her down," James said, ordered 2 nurses to hold me under while I came to get the syringe full of fluids. This was the one that had always been haunting me. Myself hopelessly struggled while the cold hard needle punctured my skin, the shearing pain raking through my body. I could feel clearly the frozen liquid coursing through my body as soon as James pulled out the syringe. A tingling numbness came suddenly, and I slowly lost my vision in a blackened blur. Then it all became pitch black. When I came back to my senses, I woke up in the same room as the last time I was there. How many days was it? I couldn't tell. On the floor was an old doll that was torn into pieces, yet still attached on one another by crudely made stitches. When I picked up the doll's head, suddenly there's a buzzing laughter, prompted me to throw it away in fear, together with a loud scream. That doll also mimicked my scream, albeit in a crude and outworldly creepy way. When I lifted my hands to cover up my face, I saw a wristband with some letter written on it. Maddie Taylor, 1997, 02, 28, number 172006, McLean Psychiatric Hospital, Belmont, Massachusetts, 02478. The door abruptly opened. Dr. James and 2 previous vicious nurses came over me, their eyes hawking me uncomfortably. "You better behave and keep quiet at nighttime, ma'am. There are many other patients, and they would appreciate the peace," James sternly demanded. "Wait a minute. What? So I am a patient in the mental asylum?" That moment when I realized someone filmed my wife and kid while they were sleeping. I'm Terry, 32. I was proud to have a happy family with my wife and 5-year-old son and a high-paying job. But I couldn't be around my wife and kids that much. My job makes me travel to different places. If it's close, I'll try to drive there and back the same day. But if it's far, I'll just deal with it. My wife had never complained about me not having enough time with the family. I was grateful for her support and felt at ease knowing she's taking care of our son. Whenever I was away on a business trip and couldn't make it back, she always sent me videos of what was going on at home in the evening. Same thing happened on my last trip. I was gone for almost 3 months. Every evening, I eased my missing my family by rewatching the clips my wife sends me over and over. My son learned to write, and he scribbled my name on a piece of paper, all cute and stuff.
"Dad, come back soon and get me a remote control car,"
my son said, all innocent-like. Work wrapped up super late, so every night I'd watch the clips of us around midnight. "They've got to be asleep," I whispered. One evening, I got off work earlier than usual and was super eager to call my wife, but she didn't answer. I couldn't believe this was the last call I'd get to make to my wife and kid. I wandered around cleaning for a bit, then remembered and grabbed my phone to check. Still no call from my wife, and I was pretty bummed. I hopped in the shower, then came out, and the first thing I did was grab my phone. But there were no notifications. Usually, my wife would have texted or sent me the last clip of the day by now. I called her again, and it was still just ringing forever. After I left a message for my wife, I started thinking if it was some special day. My wife is usually super careful and thoughtful, so I thought she must have something urgent going on and pushed the negativity aside. I opened the app and ordered some Taco Bell because I was hungry. Sitting there watching TV, I was waiting for two people at once, the delivery guy and my wife. About 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang, and I dashed out to grab the food. "Have a good evening," the delivery guy said as he handed me the food bag with a weird smile. It took a few seconds to respond to him, kinda hesitantly. When I got back, I saw a message from my wife a few minutes ago, and it totally got me pumped. She just sent a clip and didn't say anything else. Not like her usual sweet hellos. I opened my laptop and ate while I watched. Seeing my son sleeping so peacefully, I couldn't help but smile a bit. The camera slowly zoomed in on my wife, lying in the corner of the bed, and I looked at her, then shot up and slammed my hand on the table. My wife was sleeping. Who the heck filmed this clip? Could there be someone else in my house? A million thoughts popped into my head. Could my wife be cheating on me? Was she having an affair? I totally lost it and yelled my wife's name like an idiot through the clip. Maya, what the hell are you doing?" I heard the light breathing of the person holding the camera, and I completely lost it when I realized it was a man's. I shouted my wife's name loud, filled with anger, helplessness, and disappointment. The person with the camera got closer to my wife and zoomed in. Wait, my body went all weak as the camera zoomed in on my wife's face. She was bleeding a lot, with blood still pouring out from her nose, mouth, and those long cuts on her face. The bed sheet was slowly getting soaked with blood. I was shocked for a few seconds, then grabbed the laptop and yelled out loud, hoping like a fool that Maya would hear and wake up. One hand was holding the laptop, and the other was shaking as I pressed the phone, not sure if I should call my wife or the police, and I just sobbed uncontrollably. "Hey," a guy's voice shouted. I looked around in a panic, and the guy popped up in the clip, holding a camera to film himself. With his beard and a creepy smile, he looked at the camera like he was staring right at me, challenging me. For a few seconds, my heart just stopped. I recognized this dude. Wasn't he the one who delivered my fast food earlier? My throat was all choked up with sobs and gasps, and fear and anger were crushing my chest.
"Don't worry, I'll get this clip to the right place on time."
That crazy bastard cackled. My world totally crashed down since then. My wife was murdered, and my son is missing with that bastard. I'm going to use all my time and cash, no matter what, to find my son and make that bastard pay for it.
I am Adam, 32 years old. I live alone in a modest apartment in Yuma, Arizona. I work as a blog writer. The content I write usually revolves around life stories, experiences about a dish, or a travel destination. After a while of working hard, my blog has gained a lot of attention and support, but gradually, I ran out of ideas for topics and content to write about. I realized it was time for a change in both the content and the type of stories. I conducted a survey on my blog about the topics they were interested in and wanted me to write about. The majority of comments and suggestions came in for me to write short horror stories. This is truly a genre that was very new to me. I had no interest in horror, whether in fictions nor films, but to please my loyal readers, I decided to challenge myself this time. Since it was a completely new genre and not my strong suit, I spent a lot of time researching. I shifted entirely to reading horror stories and watching horror films. The initial days were quite difficult for me. When reading stories, I would remember the horror details and then imagine a dozen other tales. Each time, like so, I ended up scaring myself, feeling frightened and panicked when I was alone. The hallmark of horror films is that mysterious characters or spirits suddenly appear in hidden and dark places. I became so obsessed with this idea that I imagined an evil entity ready to pounce from any corner of the house if I wasn't cautious. Gradually, I developed a habit of scanning around whenever I entered any new space, especially dark corners. When watching horror films, I would turn on all the lights in the house, hug my pet dog, and hold the remote tightly to shut off the TV at any moment. Although I was obsessed and terrified, it was indeed a very effective way for me to approach this genre. It also brought me an abundance of inspiration. My first stories were published on the blog. The readers seemed to enjoy them, complimenting and encouraging me to continue. I gradually found myself loving this genre and wanting to gain more experience. I read more books on spirituality, thrillers, and horrifying murder cases to gather more ideas for building interesting scenarios and stories. My imagination became increasingly richer. With just one image, a tiny detail, or a leading sentence, I could make it a horror story. I even carried out challenges or spiritual games to gain real experiences and authenticity for each of my story. Gradually, my life became more and more chaotic and had my living space always carried a gloomy atmosphere. I began to view everything with a horror gaze, imagining terrifying scenarios. The friendly smile of the cashier at the supermarket would also make me panic. And I might have seen a ghost, maybe, I wasn't sure. I first saw it when I woke up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It appeared right behind me as I was looking in the mirror and vanished in an instant. I couldn't see its features clearly. It seemed to have no eyes, just two deep black sockets. I thought I was just scaring myself again, so I brushed it off and went back to bed. The second time was when I was awake at night reading a story. I tossed and turned in bed, reading about a lurking spirit in the narrative. Suddenly, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I swear I could feel someone's breath on the back of my neck right there. But it wasn't the warm breath of a normal person. It was an icy cold breath, causing my body to shudder in fear and cold. I took a deep breath, mentally debating with myself whether I should turn around. I tremblingly grabbed my phone and turned on the front camera. There was no one there. I sat up and looked around the room. Everything was the same. Feeling the icy atmosphere, I glanced at the air conditioner, noticing it was set to 61 degrees. I wondered if I had adjusted the temperature myself or if someone else had. Could it have been a ghost? The third time, I groggily woke up to the sound of a door opening. I saw the shadow of a tall man standing at the computer desk across from me, staring at me. My heart jumped, but when I sat up, the figure had vanished. However, when I looked toward the room door, it was indeed open. I felt confused and suspicious about everything around me, about my perceptions and senses. I took my own horrifying experiences and wrote them into a story on the blog. Everyone found it fascinating, and there was even a lively discussion in the comment section. One reader mentioned that ghosts often appear at 3 a.m. and suggested that I try some of these experiences and tell them about the authenticity of those encounters. Well, at first I was very frightened and was against the idea. I truly wanted to escape this haunting feeling, but I nonetheless skeptically followed through. The next day, I didn't sleep. Right at 3 a.m., I went on to open both windows. Outside was a dark and silent space. Suddenly, a foul odor resembling that of a corpse filled my nose, making me nauseous. But as I intended to return to bed, that stench immediately gone. Footsteps could be heard just outside the hallway, accompanied by the woeful crying of a woman. I leaned against the wall and stared at the door. The footsteps and cries disappeared after a few minutes. Afterward, I took a deep breath, calmed down, and moved toward the door. I looked through the peephole on the door. My heart raced violently against my chest. A tingling pain pierced through my chest. There was nobody outside. Since the view through the peephole was limited, I took the risk to open the door to extend my angles. I stepped outside. The long hallway was quiet and clean as it had been freshly cleaned that afternoon. Suddenly, the hallway lights flickered on and off, and the footsteps and cries of the woman emerged again. I quickly went back inside but didn't understand, then noticed that the door had closed behind me. The fingerprint recognition didn't work, and when I resorted to use the password, the incorrect password notification kept ringing. Helplessly gripped the doorknob. I shook it vigorously to no avail. I yelled out in fear and despair. A hand suddenly slammed down on my shoulder, causing me to panic even more and scream even louder. The security guard of the apartment building approaching demanded that I keep quiet. Looking around, everything had returned to normal, and with the security guard present, I felt like I had found my life back. I explained the crying of the woman, the hallway lights malfunctioning, and the apartment door being stuck. He didn't believe me and told me to try opening the door again. This time it worked as normal. The security guard threw a disgruntled look at me. I frantically apologized to him and went inside the house. Looking at the clock, it was almost 4 a.m., and although I still couldn't breathe normally after all that happened, yet I realized there was nothing too life-threatening dangerous. So I took another bold step to try yet another experience. I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, so I intended to leave. Suddenly, a shadow glided in and stood right behind me. The figure slowly turned to look directly into the mirror. It was me, but without any eyes. The skin was as pale as a corpse. It opened its empty, dark mouth wide agape in a horrifying manner and lunged straight at me. I didn't have time to react. The last thing I could feel was a force impacting my head, pushing me forward. My head slammed hard against the mirror, bleeding profusely. I rushed out of the bathroom, turning on all the lights in the house. I sat in the living room, trying to open my eyes wide to remain alert. I called my best friend Otis and recounted everything. He laughed, thinking that writing horror stories had led me to hallucinate. But upon seeing my genuine distress, Otis grew concerned and agreed to stay with me for a few days. It took me nearly a week to calm down completely. Yet I couldn't explain the terrifying things I had experienced. I was also unsure about the existence of ghosts or mysterious supernatural forces. But I was sure I would never recklessly engage in those forbidden acts again. Has anyone ever had any experiences like mine? Please share your story in the comments.
Hello, how may I help you?
Please help me. I just shot a man.
Could you please explain the situation further?
My wife was just attacked by him. Please come here and help me.
Do you need ambulance, fire truck, or police car?
Yes, I need everything.
That was the phone call received at 10 p.m. at our police station. I'm William, 47 years old, working as a police officer in Ohio. That evening I was on duty with 2 colleagues. We received a report of a serious assault at a residence about 15 kilometers from the station. Immediately, myself and another colleague moved to that house. Upon arrival, the scene inside the house left us stunned. Under the floor, a man and a woman lay apart from each other. The woman had been attacked, her head severely disfigured. The man had 3 gunshot wounds to his forehead, blood still flowing. Bloodstains covered the floor and walls, yet to dry. The room was in disarray. A man around 40 years old sat on the sofa, holding a trembling and crying little girl about 6 years old. He wore a blood-stained sweatshirt, and his right arm was deeply torn. That was Henry, the husband of the attacked woman, and the one who had called the police. The medical staff began assessing the condition of Henry's wife and the other man. I asked Henry questions to gather information while my colleague observed the scene. Henry was visibly panicked when he saw us arrive. He kept asking if his wife was okay and begged the medical staff to save her. We tried to reassure Henry, promising to do our best, but looking at the grim reality, we knew both his wife and the other man were already dead. After Henry calmed down, he painfully recounted the whole story. Henry's family had a small gym in the basement. That Sunday afternoon, Henry was working out on the treadmill down in the basement. Suddenly, there was a loud noise on the roof. Henry rushed upstairs and called out his wife Martha's name, but she didn't respond. Entering the bedroom, Henry didn't find his wife anywhere, only his 6-year-old daughter lying on the bed. As Henry stepped into the living room, he was suddenly attacked by a man wielding a dirty axe. Reacting quickly, Henry managed to dodge, and the axe swung down hard onto his right arm. After assessing the situation, Henry hastily retrieved the gun hidden in the drawer and fired 3 shots into the man's forehead in self-defense. Then he saw his wife lying on the floor with a horrified expression. Henry immediately called the police. Henry told us that the man who attacked his wife was named Isaac. I was surprised and asked how he knew the name of the man. Henry said that Isaac had harassed Martha several times before. The man named Isaac, 35 years old, lived in a mobile home and had no relatives other than his girlfriend who lived with him. As Martha's body was being taken away, I noticed that the couple's daughter kept screaming and looking at Henry with hatred in her eyes. The girl seemed like she wanted to run towards us and say something, but was restrained by Henry. He tightly held onto her arm, glaring at her fiercely. But I soon forgot about this detail as I focused on the case. The investigation into Isaac's background revealed prior allegations of domestic violence against women. Everything seemed clear-cut, yet the perpetrator was already deceased and the case was swiftly resolved. Henry was also acquitted of the murder charge on grounds of self-defense. However, Henry didn't stop there. He kept demanding justice, insisting that Isaac pay for taking Martha's life. Henry was seemingly deeply distraught over his wife's death, leading to some unusual actions. It was a swift but haunting case for me. Until 6 months after the case was closed, the police department received a phone call from a mysterious woman claiming to be a friend of Martha. She said she wanted to report the real murderer in Martha's case from 6 months prior. Immediately, arrangements were made for her to come to the police station and provide her statement. The girl was Keva. Keva asserted that the person who killed Martha was Henry, Martha's husband. Keva confessed that she and Henry had an affair while Martha was still alive. Henry planned to kill his wife and take possession of Martha's considerable wealth. He secretly investigated and discovered that Martha was having an affair. The daughter he cherished so much was actually the daughter of his wife and her lover. Henry shared his plan with Keva, hoping she would cooperate with him, but Keva adamantly refused. After being rejected by Keva, Henry shifted his focus to the man, Isaac, to manipulate him and frame him for the crime. Henry's plan unfolded perfectly according to what he had calculated. After Martha's death, he sold the house and bought a new one, living comfortably with the money he inherited from his wife. Keva revealed that she had wronged Martha by being involved with Henry. However, her conscience would never allow her to commit murder. Keva underwent psychological treatment for many months to be able to speak the truth. She urged us to quickly apprehend Henry because he might harm Martha's daughter. We arrived at the address provided by Keva and witnessed Martha's daughter being abused by a strange woman. The girl, with a face resembling her late mother's, cried loudly and begged for forgiveness from the unknown woman. Shortly after, Henry returned home and appeared shocked to see us. The cold-blooded man was living off the money of his deceased wife, along with his lover, who was 20 years younger than him. The case was reinvestigated, and Henry was sentenced to death for the first-degree murder. His accomplice received a 7-year prison sentence for child abuse. After everything, the one who suffered the most severe damage was still Martha's daughter.
I'm Oscar, and the creepy stuff I went through was like 15 years back. Back then, unlike most guys my age, I was pretty shy and kept to myself. When I was a kid, I didn't hang around or anything, just stayed home, watched TV, and read stories. When I got older, like in high school, I was still pretty quiet. I didn't cause trouble, but I wasn't killing it in school or great at any subject either. Back then, my buddies were all flexing with their girlfriends, while I was just showing off the skills I leveled up in my game. There wasn't much to say since everyone was into their own stuff. But I was the only one up front, so those group hangouts made me feel totally out of place. I got self-conscious about how I talked, especially if I was talking to a girl. There were a couple of girls in school who'd come up to me, but after like 3 sentences, they'd bounce. I only felt confident in my skills when I was gaming, so I started spending more and more time on it. And then, I met my first crush in the game. Her name was Casey, or at least, that's what I figured from her game tag. Funny enough, both Casey and I lived in New York. After a few times of being on the same team, I noticed Casey, but I wasn't really looking to get to know her. Then, out of nowhere, she hit me up first. Casey's way of talking was pretty hilarious, had me laughing all the time. I figured she was around my age, just a guess though. Didn't want to ask anything too personal. We talked a lot about our shared love for gaming, and slowly started chatting about life and feelings too. Talking to Casey made my heart feel tired, because it just wouldn't stop racing. Every day, I couldn't wait for game time, and seeing Casey's name online would have me grinning like an idiot. After we'd been chatting for like 2 weeks, Casey just suddenly dropped that she liked me, and I sat there staring at her messages for like 10 minutes, totally shocked. So, I had a girlfriend and was all proud, showing her off to my friends. They were doubting it and told me to bring Casey to the next hangout. Before I could even bring it up to Casey, she was the one who suggested we meet. Casey's always like that. Her being so upfront and taking the lead totally surprised and made me happy. Casey wanted to hang at my place, just the two of us, and only in the evening when no one else was around. I said yes to Casey, but I was low-key stressing about how to tell my parents and brother. But fate really hooked me up and made it easy to meet my first love. My parents said they were going to a party at a friend's place, and my brother and his crew were heading out for the night. I was hyped and texted Casey, and we set a time to meet up. To be all suave, I offered to pick Casey up, but she turned me down and told me to just wait at home for a surprise. I sent Casey my address and got everything ready for our first date. I cleaned up my room, threw on a nice suit, and secretly used my brother's hair wax and cologne. My phone buzzed with a message, and I grabbed it quick to check out Casey's profile pic. "I'm outside your house." My heart started racing. My hands and feet were sweating, and I was so freaked out I totally forgot to open the door. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and no one was there. I stood there for a minute, ran to the gate to check around, then ran back inside to grab my phone and text Casey again. She said she messed up the address and would be over in a sec. I ran to the bathroom, fixed myself up, then plopped down in the living room to wait. I couldn't sit still, kept wringing my shirt, and then the door knocked again. This time, I rushed over like crazy and threw open the door. What I saw made me freeze. A fat guy with messy clothes and hair was just standing there grinning at me. "You need help?" I said, all confused. "Hey, Oscar, it's Casey." The guy grinned big, eyes wide open. I froze when he said his name, Casey. Before I could even react, he stepped up, shoved his arm against the door, and wouldn't let me close it. I ran inside, grabbed my phone, bolted to my room, locked the door, and shaking, dialed the cops. He was outside, knocking on the door like non-stop, calling my name real soft. Didn't yell or anything. Each knock made my whole body freeze up, and I covered my ears in both hands till it hurt. The fear had me, a 14-year-old, crying like a little kid, even though I was in my own house. The cops showed up, and the guy was gone, along with some small stuff from the living room. My parents and brother came back soon after, and they totally freaked out when they saw the house and how out of it I looked. After more than 3 days of looking, the cops finally caught Casey, but I couldn't bring myself to face him. I didn't even dare to tell anyone how stupid I was for giving a stranger my address and personal info. It was so embarrassing, thinking I had feelings for a freak for almost a month. Definitely a lesson in being careful that I'll never forget.
I'm currently living alone in a new city. My life was quite unstable after I broke up with my 5-year relationship. Having to give up a habit was really difficult. I was very depressed and decided to go to a far place to change everything. I'm not a very sociable person, so it's difficult to make friends. Nearly 2 months have passed in this new house. Loneliness and cold are the two main emotions in me. Having things didn't go as expected made me feel even more hopeless. And then, everything changed when I saw an extremely cute friend. It's a medium-sized dog. I'm not sure what breed it is. It's probably a hybrid. What makes it even more special is its eyes, with one side being big and the other side smaller. The dog stood in front of my house for a long time, his eyes focused intently inside. I approached and opened the door, when it happily wagged its tail and ran into the house, starting to explore everything with its constantly upturned nose. I posted on my personal page, wrote a notice and posted it in front of my house, but no one came to claim the dog. Finally, I contacted the local animal shelter. They said if I wanted, I could keep the dog for a few days and let them know if I couldn't find an owner or wanted to adopt it. I've never raised an animal, but I know a saying, like pets are good medicine to heal the soul. I made a fairly quick decision to keep the dog, temporarily calling him Duke. I made an appointment with the vet to bring Duke in for a checkup in 2 weeks. Except for the eye defect that makes Duke not very beautiful, everything about that boy is great. With a combination of white and brown fur, Duke is smart, knows how to listen, and understands things. I feel like my life is much happier and less lonely. I learned about how to take care of a dog, creating the most comfortable environment for Duke. The boy doesn't ask for anything. The only thing Duke needed was me. I confided in Duke about everything: work, feelings, family, and secrets. Duke sat next to me, looking intently at me, like he really understood what I was saying. After a week, I called the rescue station to officially adopt Duke, and made that day my lovely little boy's birthday. We did everything together, and I was extremely regretful. Why didn't I adopt an adorable furry friend like this sooner? One time when I brought Duke back from the swimming pool, I noticed that Duke was very upset and stopped eating. Duke's appointment is 2 days away, but I asked the doctor to come to my house to examine Duke right away. The doctor arrived. She asked for some necessary supplies and took Duke to a private room. While waiting, I prepared some drinks for the doctor and food for Duke. "Sarah, come in here for a moment," the doctor called me in a rather panicked voice after about 15 minutes of examination. "Sarah, haven't you noticed anything unusual about your dog?" The doctor looked at me with a very concerned attitude. "What do you mean?" I asked confusedly, and at the same time turned my eyes towards Duke. "My dog has a deep and dark eye socket. It's really creepy." I gasped in panic and ran over, while Duke happily wagged his tail at me. And then my emotions became even more chaotic when I saw a small round object placed on the white cloth next to Duke. The round object emitted a buzzing sound, and my thoughts raced by. I let go of Duke and collapsed to the ground. The doctor quickly rushed over to help me up. "I think it's a camera, Sarah." I immediately called the police. I couldn't stay calm and kept crying uncontrollably. I had heard of many cases where women were stalked using hidden cameras, but I never imagined that I would become a victim in such a sophisticated way. After 3 days of investigation, the police caught that pervert. He was a middle-aged man living 3 houses away from me, the owner of a shop specializing in surveillance equipment and cameras. I was not the only victim. He would certainly face punishment and be required to pay a substantial compensation. That was the end for him, but it opened up a terrible and horrifying period for me. I confided in Duke about everything, did many things with him, and even stripped down in front of him. The trauma was too great, so I sent Duke back to the shelter and moved to another place. I became afraid of pets and everything that was round and black. I hope that my story will serve as a lesson to raise awareness for everyone, especially women. When I was 7, my parents took me to Disneyland for the first time after a tough semester. Like a lot of other kids, I got pretty excited when my parents told me about the weekend plans. For some friends my age, going to Disneyland probably wasn't as hard to pull off or as rare as it was for me. My family wasn't rich or anything, but my parents always gave me the best they could, and I was really thankful for that. As a 7-year-old, I thought going to Disneyland would take forever to actually happen. The weekend I'd been waiting for my whole life finally showed up. I woke up very early, picked out my best outfit, and scarfed down breakfast without my mom even having to remind me. "I'm all charged up to have a blast all day," I said. The 3 of us got to Disneyland at 10 a.m. You gotta admit, kids have endless energy, and they get recharged super fast just by going to places they love. My family hit up the souvenir stand, and my parents grabbed some little stuff like keychains and magnets that were only a couple bucks. I wasn't into that stuff at all, but my eyes totally locked on to the Minnie statue right in the middle of the display. "Mom and Dad, can I?" I kind of hesitated, pointed at the statue, and gave my parents a hopeful look. Mom smiled and walked over to grab the statue, but then her smile faded, and she looked at me all worried before putting it back where it was. I got it. This wasn't the first time I'd been turned down, but I still really wanted that Minnie statue. The whole trip, I couldn't stop thinking about that statue. At the end of the day, I made an excuse to hit the bathroom, went back to the souvenir shop, and did something I shouldn't have without even thinking about it. I quickly grabbed the Minnie figurine and stuffed it in my backpack. When I got home, I stashed the Minnie figurine in my room. At first, I was very happy and proud to have the thing I wanted, but I always felt a bit guilty about it, and that little mistake ended up costing me big time. I started to feel like someone was keeping an eye on me. I kept waking up in the middle of the night because I heard a soft rustling sound somewhere in the room. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of a shadow in my dreams, with big ears and Minnie's signature red bow. When I woke up all of a sudden, the room was still quiet, and there was the Minnie figurine, just staring at me, its big black eyes wide open and smiling. One day, I freaked out when I saw that the Minnie figurine I had left on the bookshelf was now sitting on my desk. At first, I figured I must have moved it by accident and just didn't remember. But when it kept popping up in other spots around the house, the kitchen, the bathroom, and even the living room, I started to get really freaked out. One night, while I was asleep, I felt like someone was standing at the end of my bed. When I opened my eyes, there was Minnie, just standing there quietly, staring at me with her dark eyes. She didn't move or say a word, just stood there, totally still, kind of creepy. I yelled really loud, shaking under the blanket. My parents ran over and I quickly threw back the covers and pointed to the corner of the room. But there was nothing there. As the days went by, Minnie's presence got more and more obvious and freaky. She showed up out of nowhere, no matter where I was, in the backyard or even in the shed. Minnie's quietness wasn't scary, but her sudden appearances and that blank look on her face started to freak me out more and more. As I was walking home from school, I saw Minnie standing across the street. Nobody around recognized her, just me. She stood there frozen again, staring at me with those lifeless eyes. I ran home, trying to escape the fear and that creepy feeling like Minnie could chase me at any moment. As the months went by, I started feeling worse and worse, both physically and mentally. My parents were worried about how I was acting, but I didn't dare tell them the truth about Minnie because I was scared they'd find out I stole the statue. Feeling desperate, I decided it was time to put an end to this haunting. I chucked the statue in the trash, but that gaze and smile were still staring right at me. I got mad, picked up the statue, raised it high, and slammed it down hard on the ground. The statue's body shattered, but Minnie's head was totally fine. And I swear I heard her laughing like she was mocking me or something. Minnie kept popping up in my dreams, all intact and quiet, with those deep eyes and that creepy smile. There she was, all messed up and bleeding, with those deep eyes and that scary smile. It felt like smashing the statue just made Minnie show up more, way more often, and way closer. I couldn't take it anymore, so I grabbed my piggy bank with all my savings and took it to the living room to confess everything to my parents. "I'm sorry. I want to pay for that statue. I know I made a mistake. I'm really sorry." I was scared, helpless, and totally exhausted. After hearing everything, my parents didn't yell at me. Instead, they comforted me to help me feel better. The next day, my parents took me to Disneyland, but this time, I wasn't feeling happy or excited at all. My family talked to the management, and the souvenir shop owner apologized like crazy and gave the money back for the statue. I was super grateful they forgave me for my mistakes so nicely. I even went to church and told God all the stuff I messed up. I felt way better inside. I never saw Minnie again, and I'll always remember those creepy days as a lesson about messing up and what it can cost you. I realized that nothing is worth giving up your peace of mind.
I wanted Martin gone, but I never expected it to actually happen right before my eyes. Amidst the bright fireworks. I'm Danny, a high school student. I remember every detail of that fateful day. I was walking along a forest path, my sneakers, which I usually kept spotless, covered in mud. Sweat trickled down my neck. It wasn't because of the hot Ohio June weather, but because I had just run away from Martin for the third time this week. Martin was a classmate, almost a head taller than me. He always found ways to make my life miserable, knocking my books to the floor, shoving me into lockers, or just blocking my way. Today, Martin chased me from class all the way to the parking lot, yelling curses. If he caught me, I was sure to get a few more bruises. This path led to my house. Nobody knew about it except a few kids in the neighborhood. Once I was sure I'd run far enough, I breathed a sigh of relief and slowed to a walk. With each heavy step, I felt truly helpless about myself and my current situation. Why was I Martin's target? Why was I so weak? Suddenly a sound echoed, and I stopped to listen. Leaves rustled, as if someone was moving around. I turned toward the sound. A woman sat at the base of a large oak tree. She wore a long, dirty brown sweater, her tangled gray hair obscuring part of her face. A faint stench wafted towards me. She stared at me, her voice hoarse as if she hadn't had water in a long time. "I know how to deal with bullies." I didn't answer, my expression blank. She chuckled softly. "This 4th of July, bring that kid to Scioto Mile, under the Main Street Bridge. 9 p.m. I will free you." I shivered slightly, still staring blankly at the woman. "Remember that, Danny Miller?" I gasped. I had never told her my name. I quickly turned and ran home. The woman's laughter echoed behind me. I didn't dare look back. I didn't tell anyone and tried to forget about the strange encounter. I thought the woman must be homeless and have mental health issues. The next week, my life went on as usual. Martin continued to torment me. Until Friday afternoon when I was sitting at lunch with Sarah, a girl I'd been trying to impress since the beginning of the school year. Suddenly, Martin appeared, snatched my sandwich from my hand and threw it on the ground. He stomped on it, then grabbed my shirt and pulled me to my feet. "Hey, Sarah, you know this guy pees his pants in gym class?" I saw him crying like a baby. Martin laughed loudly, his voice echoing through the cafeteria, making everyone turn and stare. "Martin!" I tried to pull away, but he held on tighter. He shoved me hard, sending me crashing into the chair, knocking over my entire food tray onto the ground. Food and drinks splattered all over my shirt. Sarah looked at me with disappointment, then turned and walked away. My face burned with shame. All around, the entire cafeteria was looking at me and giggling, some even recording with their phones. In that moment, a rage ignited within me, and I swore to myself that Martin would pay for everything he had done. That evening, I was home alone. I thought about the woman in the woods, about her strange promise. The humiliating scene from that morning flashed in my mind, along with those two words, "Free you." The next day, I walked out to the parking lot after school. Martin was there, laughing and talking with his friends. He saw me and called out loudly. Laughter from Martin's group of friends echoed. My face felt hot. Martin walked closer and shoved my shoulder. That's when I saw Sarah walking out of class. She stopped and looked toward us. "I'm gonna make you pay." Martin laughed loudly. "What did you say?" "July 4th, Kyoto Mile, under the Main Street Bridge. 9 p.m. You brave enough to show up?" Martin's eyes lit up. "You'll regret this." I turned and walked away, my heart pounding. July 4th arrived faster than I thought. All day I felt antsy. I didn't know if that woman would really appear, or if it was just a crazy hallucination. That evening, I told my parents I was going to watch fireworks with a friend. Kyoto Mile was crowded with families celebrating Independence Day. The smell of barbecue and cotton candy filled the air. I walked to the underpass. This was a less frequented area. Martin was already waiting, looking very smug. As soon as he saw me, Martin lunged, grabbed my shirt, and repeatedly punched me in the stomach while yelling curses. I bent over, gasping for air. The first firework exploded in the sky, its red light illuminating the water below. "Hello, Danny." The woman's voice rang out, catching both our attention. She approached with a wide smile, her eyes unsettlingly wide. Martin let go of me, his expression blank. He turned and ran. But the woman lunged with incredible speed. One hand grabbed Martin's neck, lifting him off the ground. Her strength was inhuman. "No! Let me go! Help me!" Martin screamed, his voice trembling with fear, his legs flailing wildly in the air. Fireworks boomed overhead, drowning out Martin's desperate cries for help. "Danny wants to be free," the woman said, then turned to look at me. "Isn't that right?" In that moment, it was like I suddenly woke up. "Don't! I don't want this. I was wrong." But it was too late. The woman laughed loudly. Martin's screaming stopped. His struggles grew weaker. I squeezed my eyes shut, covering my head with both hands, not daring to look at what was about to happen. I heard a horrifying tearing sound, something wet splattering, and the coppery smell of blood filled the air. When I opened my eyes, I was alone on the bridge. Martin and the woman were gone. On the ground were dark stains, and a torn piece of Martin's t-shirt lay nearby. "No, what have I done? What is this?" I whispered, my voice lost. Suddenly, a loud firework exploded. I flinched, jumping up and screaming. It turned out to be fireworks outside the window. My heart pounded. Cold sweat drenched my pajamas. I looked around my familiar room, the light from the digital clock showing 11:30 p.m. It was just a dream. It was all a terrifying nightmare. I breathed a sigh of relief, wiping the sweat from my forehead. But the dream felt strangely real. I still remembered every detail. I shook my head, trying to shake off those horrifying images. It must be because I was so obsessed with Martin's bullying that I had such bizarre dreams. The next morning, as I walked into class, I subconsciously looked for Martin's familiar figure. But his seat was empty. The second day passed, and Martin still didn't show up. The third and fourth day, same thing. His seat remained empty. The teacher announced that Martin had gone missing on 4th of July night, and his family and the police were actively searching for him. In those days, I started to feel uneasy. The images from my dream kept coming back. Did something really happen to Martin? Did that strange woman in the woods truly exist? I didn't dare ask anyone about Martin, partly out of fear that people would suspect me, and partly because deep down, I felt both guilty and relieved. Even if it was just in a dream, I had wished Martin would disappear. And now, that wish seemed to have come true. Those nights that followed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling in the dark. The question kept haunting me. Did Martin really pay the price for his violent actions? And that mysterious woman in my dream, was it she who freed me as she promised?